Thank you, musicians. Just for a few moments this morning, I'll be talking about, the title is actually called Fani, Willis, Nathan Wade, and Joseph. And the truth will come out. We live in a society, and I'm not going to overmake this point, and I don't need to really make a big point about it because we all know it's true. We live in a society that's very unclean. We know that. It's very unclean. I mean, what happens today is you can't imagine some of the things that go on, what people do today. It's unfathomable how wicked people, what people can do in their wickedness. Read of parents who they didn't like watching their kids. They literally put them in a dog kennel, a little dog cage with chains, collar, the whole 9 yards. That's happened more than once. And some of the neighbors would say, these parents or these people, I would have never thought they were like that. We only see one side of all of us here this morning. None of us really know each other that well. We know each other pretty well, which is good. But I would think we all would agree that there's a lot about us that we don't want people to know. Isn't that true? Not that we're committing something crazy, but we have the possibility of committing something crazy. So, it was in a book. I'll get to my sermon in a moment, but it was in a book, though, Reaching for the Invisible God by Philip Yancey. And he just talks about responsibility. Let me just read one part of this. A young woman came to Dr. Dobson. She said, for 4 years ago, I was dating a man, and then I became pregnant. I was devastated, and I kept asking God, why will you allow this to happen to me? I didn't know God had anything to do with it. Susan Smith from South Carolina, mother who pushed her 2 sons to the lake and drowned. Later on, she was blamed on a phantom carjacker for the deed. She said, I confess I dropped the lowest moment in my life when I allowed my children to go down the ramp into the water without me and drown. After I did it, I took off running and screaming, oh God, what have I done? And God, why do you allow these things to happen? And, I have just a few, but that's all. I can say that over and over and over again. And people got this in their mind when these things happen. Somehow, in a weird way, they attach God to that, what happened. God had nothing to do with that. We live in a fallen world, and fallen people do fallen things. But to blame God, but people do. They blame God for their behavior. It's always someone else. It's not my responsibility. Someone else made me get this mad. Someone else made me do this. Someone else made me leave my wife or my husband. Someone else, my kids made me hit them. It's always someone else. But if we're gonna survive, we have to. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. We have to be willing to take responsibility, not just for our actions, but for our thoughts. Because it all starts in the mind. He goes on in this article. I think it was Philip Yancey. Yeah, Philip Yancey said this. Having examined every instant of human suffering in the Bible, I've come away convinced that many Christians who face the trial attempt to answer a different question than maybe God's asking. Proverbs says a person's own folly will lead him to ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord. Proverbs 19:3, the Amplified says it like this: the foolishness of a man undermined his own way, ruining whatever he undertakes. Then his heart is resentful and rages against the Lord. For him being a fool, he blames the Lord instead of himself. It's nothing new. People blaming God, blame other people, nothing new about it. Story lately, you just watch the news, and if you've been aware of it, there's a story right now across America. It's Fani, Willis, and Nathan Wade trial that's going on. I'm not going to get into all the details. I don't need to, but it's an interesting trial, and I simply said the truth's going to come out. And I watched some of the proceedings and stuff. Interesting. But anyway, let's go to I call this one Fani, Willis, Nathan Wade, and Joseph in Genesis chapter 39. Genesis chapter 39. This is the Living Bible, so it's a little different. Verse 1, when Joseph arrived in Egypt as a captive of the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased from the Potiphar, a member of the personal staff of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Now his Potiphar was the captain of the king's bodyguard as chief executionary. And the Lord greatly blessed Joseph there in the home of his master, so everything he did was successful, or he succeeded. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph in a very special way. I think this is amazing because Potiphar is not saved, but yet he can see something in the life of a man that loves God with all his heart. He can see something. There's something tangible and different about this young man. It doesn't say how he knew exactly or what the favor was, but he knew there was something, there's a quality about his life, there's a character, there's something about him that wasn't like everybody else. There's something different about him. The Bible goes, after he says, Pharaoh noticed that the Lord was with Joseph in a very special way. So Joseph naturally became quite a favorite with him. Soon he was put in charge of the administration of Pharaoh's household and all his business affairs. At once the Lord began blessing Potiphar for Joseph's sake. And all the household affairs began to run smoothly. His crops flourished, his flocks multiplied. So Potiphar gave Joseph the complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. He hadn't had a worry in the world, and Joseph was there except that what he decided to eat. Joseph, by the way, was a very handsome young man. Verse 7, one day, about this time, Potiphar's wife began making eyes at Joseph. I've got 3 women this morning. They're going to come up here and show us what making eyes means. Of course, I'm kidding. But you will read that for a guy making eyes. How does a woman make eyes? Honestly, I don't know. If she was, would you go, are you making eyes right now? I don't know how that works, making eyes at me. I don't know. Just trust me, I don't see any eyes looking at me. Verse 7, at that same day, Potiphar's wife began making eyes at Joseph, and she suggested to come and sleep with me. This will be G-rated. I'm not going to say anything I shouldn't say here in front of children. But Joseph refused, and he told her, my master trusts me with everything in the entire household. He himself has no more authority than I have. He has held back nothing from me except you yourselves, because you are his own wife. How can I do such a wicked thing as this? It would be great sin against God. But she kept on with her suggestions day after day. And even though he refused to listen and kept out of her way as much as possible, then one day as he was in the house going about his work, it just happened that there was no one around. Because it was set up by the woman. No one was in the house. She came and grabbed him, demanding that he would be with her. He tore himself away. As he did, his jacket slipped out of his hand that she was holding, and he fled from the house. When she saw that his jacket, she had his jacket in her hand, she began screaming, and with the other men around the palace, they come running to see what had happened, and she was crying hysterically. My husband tried to bring this Hebrew here to insult me, she sobbed. He tried to have a relationship with me, but I screamed. He ran, and he forgot to take his jacket. Here's his jacket. So she kept the jacket, and when her husband came home that night, she told him the story. That Hebrew slave that you had around here tried to rape me, and I was only saved by my screams. He fled, leaving the jacket behind. Well, when the husband heard his wife's story, he was very upset. He threw Joseph into prison where the king's prisoners were kept in chains. But the Lord was with Joseph there too. He was kind to him, granting him favor, the chief jailer. In fact, the jailer soon handed over his entire prison administration to Joseph, so that all the prisoners were responsible to him. The chief jailer had no more worries, and that Joseph took care of everything. It simply says, because the Lord was with him, and everything ran smoothly with Joseph in charge. So let's talk about this for a moment. I'm going to cover 12 simple things, and I mean 12 simple things that if you and I would do them, we can survive. I mean, we know this. I won't get into detail. And I don't even want to read statistics. They're so depressing. It's like relationships, affairs, all these things. It's like to this generation, it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. And for some reason, it's just these sins today, like, it's bad to them, it's good, and good is bad. It's like we're all mixed up. We all know that. And we know the world doesn't look at any sin as being serious. They mock at it, they laugh about it, they joke about it, and they tell you they want more of it, but it's absolutely horrific. And yes, there is pleasure in sin, or else no one would do it. One of the things Christians make a mistake about is they think, oh, they don't have no fun. Really? They're having a lot of fun, actually. It's pleasure for a season, though. It's short-lived. It doesn't go on and on, but there's a reason why they do it. Think about your life before you got saved. There's a reason why you took drugs. There's a reason why you did what you did, and you had a party, and it worked for a while, but sooner or later, the party got old real quick, or years later, and you realize, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't keep living like this. Now, there are so many character traits that God has to work out in Joseph's life. I say this because Joseph was a 17-year-old boy, and his father made him a special coat. Simply says Jacob loved Joseph more than all his brothers because he had been born to him in his old age. So one day Jacob had a special gift or coat made for Joseph, a beautiful coat. And his brothers hated Joseph because the father had loved him more than the rest of them, and they couldn't say one kind word to Joseph. We don't know the full nature of this coat. Some say it was a coat of many colors. It would be the coat that the father would wear. It's a beautiful coat. It was something that he would wear or pass down to his favorite. That's why Joseph has it. So Joseph has this. But Joseph, he's 17 years old. Think about this. When Joseph's going to do what he's going to do, God has plans for Joseph. We know what the plans are. God's going to use Joseph to deliver his people, right? God's going to do a lot of things through Joseph's life, but Joseph at this moment, he's not ready for it. There's so many things in his life. He's a spoiled brat, number one. He really is. He can do anything he wants to do. He's his dad's favorite. He had it easy. Anything he wanted, his dad would give him. He's spoiled. And all his brothers know you're the favorite one. And he's the type of guy that says, I am. How you like me? And that's it, Joseph. They don't like him. And they get upset. Listen, brothers and sisters and brothers, there can be a divide among them, and it can be a real divide that really hurts because the favoritism of a parent. His own brothers hated him, didn't want to be with him. They reject him, and they betray him. But that's other sermons. God says, Joseph, you got a long way to go before you lead. You're a 17-year-old kid. We got about 10, 15, 20 years. We got to work a lot of things out of your heart. So Joseph doesn't know this, but it's the beginning of his life. At first it was okay, but God's favor is on his life. He's making choices, the right choices. Let me say this. The most powerful thing we can do, you know what that is? The most powerful thing, I thought about this last week. It took me all week to keep thinking about it. The most powerful thing we can do is do right. The most powerful thing you can do is do right. That does something. It releases God's blessing. It releases God's favor. It allows God to step into your life and help you. Obedience, blessings follow, right? So I don't know what to do, Pastor. If you don't know what to do, just remember real simple. Do what's right. Doing what's right. And so Joseph is put in this position. Now remember, he's got a future. He's in front of him. He's sold. Next thing you know, he's in prison for many years, actually. In Joseph's mind, this seems like the end of all the dreams that I have that God gave me. Everything's going to end here. It was only the beginning. Now, I know I get this. We're not all Josephs. I get that, okay? But there are plans and purposes God has for our life also. Maybe not as grand as Joseph's. Well, I wouldn't want that job, period. But whatever it might be, God has a plan and a great purpose for your life. He really does. But how do you get from A to B? You have to live. There's no going away. There's no going around life. You get a young man or a young person, you only know so much because you only live so long, right? You get someone who's never had children, they have a hard time counseling families that have children, they don't have a child themselves. Or you can give some counsel how to go through the trial. When they haven't even been through the trial, they live with a mama their whole life. They haven't gone through anything yet. This is Joseph. So I say this for a real particular reason, because Joseph is just beginning his journey. In his mind, it's about over. God's just beginning to start. And here's my point here. Some of the greatest battles you're going to face is early on in your life as a Christian. And I don't know why. I'll talk more about another time. I don't know why it seems to go that way sometimes. It seems like some of the biggest battles you have is early in your faith with Christ. Other than the obvious, you're young in the Lord. The devil knows you're young. The devil knows you're not that strong, so he's going to assault you with everything he has to take you out of the game. If I can take you out in the beginning, I'll have you. If I can discourage you enough or get you to sin enough that you live your life full of guilt and you never arise to the occasion by believing in the blood, then I'll have you. Because along this journey, everyone in this room, we're going to all commit sins and do things we wish we would never do or done. We don't plan to do it. We plan to live for God, but we're humanity. We're fallen creatures. We do things. We do things even after we say, I will never do that. We still do it. How many told God in the altar, God, I will never do this again, and by next Sunday you're saying the same thing? So Joseph just beginning, he's assaulted with Potiphar's wife. When I first started my becoming an evangelist, we were in my ministry years ago in our fellowship. I think it's about 35, 40 churches. And I started holding meetings, I would just travel. You're talking a long time ago. We didn't have many churches, but we've done the same way. You traveled all over, hop on a plane, go here, go. And I don't like traveling. Some people say, you must love traveling. I hate traveling. But traveling all over, I just do what I got to do. And the hardest thing for me was to leave my kids, my children, my wife. That was always the hardest thing for me, to leave them at the airport and go. That about killed me every time I did it. But I remember one time, starting my ministry, I was in Texas. And I checked in late at a hotel, and there was a young lady that I noticed. How'd you notice her? Because she was a young, pretty lady. Blonde, blue eyes. I remember it to this day for this particular reason. It seemed like she was going kind of the same way I was going to get her room. It's late at night. I'm thinking late, like 11 or 12. And she has one big suitcase, and she's trying to haul it through the parking lot up the stairs where I was up the stairs also. And she's there holding it. There's no one around, just me and her, and she's trying to push it. The first thought I had is you should help her. You help her to go to her room and you're on your way. I looked at her, said, I ain't helping you, girl. I'm going to bed. I'm not getting near you. You're too pretty. You give me that, oh, look, cast your eyes at me, and I'll be, not hardly, but I said, no, she's too pretty. I can imagine taking the thing to her room. Here's your, I said, I'm going to take a chance. No, I don't care what she thinks. How rude can you be? I don't care what she thinks. I'm going to my bed. I'm going to live clean one more day. I'm not going to mess up my life. I just started. How'd it go? He lasted a day. I heard he did a great job. Yeah, he was a one-hit wonder. Huh? What happened to him? Pharaoh's wife. So Joseph, there's things that Joseph does. There's 12 things that he does. I'll cover a few today, maybe some more on Thursday, I'm not sure. And if you and I would just do these things, just do what I'm saying, do it, the chance of you falling is pretty small. Because we don't have to fall. We don't have to go that way. We don't have to do that deed. And yes, we will be tempted throughout our entire life. We will always face, we know this, the world, the flesh, and the devil, always. So Joseph, just beginning his ministry, God's got great plans for this man to lead multitudes and multitudes of people. He's everything. In God's plan, this one life, this one teenager means everything to God. So what happens? Well, he's assaulted by Potiphar's wife. Now, I say this because it's important. You say, well, what's the big deal? Potiphar could have any woman he would ever want. They say usually Potiphar or Pharaoh, any of them, any women that were in their court were the most beautiful in the land. So some commentators say this woman is probably the most beautiful woman that Joseph maybe has ever seen in his entire life. And this woman just happened to be looking at him. She said, I like this boy. The Bible makes it a point saying, and Joseph's a handsome man. But here's my point. You can live for God. Joseph is in a land, think about it, he's in society that's morally corrupt. There is no Bible where Joseph is, no church. No one's there to help him. He's in a foreign culture. Everything in the world is going against him. How can you make it through this? You're by yourself. You don't know the language. You don't have no friends. You need everything in your own life. How are you going to survive this? Well, he does. Well, here's a few thoughts. We can be morally pure in a polluted world. Can we agree on that? But it's not going to happen accidentally. It's not going to happen. You're not going to win any wars unless you know you're in a war and you take advantage. You do some things that you know you need to do. You don't ignore your weak areas. You don't ignore your strong areas. There's things you should do and not do if you're going to make it. We all know this. The enemy has strategy. He has attacks. He has a purpose. And I don't know if the enemy was behind this blonde girl that day 40 years ago. I don't know, and I'll never want to know, but who knows could have happened. And they throw this in. You get this real quick. I just thought of that. This is for people who don't think they could fall. If you don't think you can fall into sexual sin, then you're godlier than David, stronger than Samson, and wiser than Solomon. The man or the woman says, I would never, I can't do that. Oh, yes, you can. Pride. That's a proud statement. Say, I can never do that. Be very careful. Then you don't know yourself well enough. So here's a few principles that we survive our crazy, unclean culture. Number one, be aware of situations where you're vulnerable. These 12 things are simple. Some of you say, well, that's so simple. We'll just go do them. Number one, be aware of a situation where you're vulnerable. It talks about Pharaoh's bodyguard, Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's bodyguard. He's a security chief, basically. Joseph is in this position. He's with a man. I don't know if you want to be around the guy who executes people. But he did well under Potiphar. And there's no really mention of Joseph really struggling much. He's only 17 years old. You would think there'd be a teenager at 17. There's a lot of things you're struggling with. There's no mention of Joseph struggling during this period. He's torn from his father, away from his own culture, away from his own family, don't understand the language. He has nothing. And yet, somehow, Joseph, only a 17-year-old teenager, he has the ability to make some adjustments wherever life found him. It wasn't his choice to be where he's at, right? Sometimes, truthfully, sometimes you're in a place you say, I don't know how in the world I got here. You ever say that? Okay, that doesn't answer the question. It doesn't matter how you got here. You're there. What are you going to do about it? And so sometimes, I think oftentimes, we're good at telling people what they do wrong, but we just show them how they can help themselves. Well, you can tell me how morally unclean I am. So tell me how to get out of it. Show me a way that if I do this, then I can live right. Because it does matter what you do or don't do. So by this time, Joseph is in his mid-20s. He's put in charge of everything Potiphar has. Potiphar trusted Joseph so much, you can read it for yourself, that he didn't even check on Joseph. And there's a statement. It's there for a reason. The Bible, NIV says that, and Joseph was a well-built, handsome man. That's what it says. He was well-built, handsome man. And this sets the stage for temptation. Satan hits you and I when we are most vulnerable. Joseph is in a situation that any moment you can fall because you have no support system with you at this moment. Single man in his 20s, normal young man, away from all his family, all his friends. He has no one that shares his belief. And he's in a very, very tempting situation. It's very private. No one else would probably ever know about this situation. But let me say that it is possible to live clean for God in this generation. Yes, even by yourself. He was most vulnerable. At this moment, he was vulnerable because you have no support system. You're probably lonely. You're probably tired. You're probably wondering what's going on here. You have nothing. You have no one. You have no one and nothing to hold you up. But he does. He has God. So here he is. He's in this position. The enemy is assaulting him. You know, of course, people think, no one sees this, but I mean, no, sin is never private. The Bible says in Psalms 90, verse 8, he has set our iniquities before him. Our secret sins are set before his countenance. Romans 14 says, no one lives for himself and no one dies for himself. So when are vulnerable? Well, he's vulnerable, number one, because he had no support system. I'll get to that maybe later. But the other thing about Joseph, the Bible says this, that he was very attractive and he had God's hand was on his life. Let me tell you, what makes a man or a woman attractive is the hand of God on their life. What makes that godly woman attractive is not just her looks, but her godliness. She loves God. So Joseph, because he is good looking, you have to be very careful. I won't spend much time on it because a lot of us can't relate. That's not your temptation. The good looking, attractive, sometimes sometimes good looking, truthfully, can be used against you. You can be a walking, beautiful disaster. Your beauty is destroying you. You will have temptations because of your beauty that others won't have. That's a fact. Pat, how come girls never look at me? Maybe the sun, I don't know. Maybe just the sun when you're standing, I don't know. Maybe you have something, how you look might have something to do with it, I don't know. But you read about in the Bible, there were some good-looking men. There was David, Absalom, and Joseph. There was actually others, but most of them fell because they couldn't handle what they were. Joseph could. God has given him good looks. Maybe God has given you good looks. And because God has given you good looks, I'm going to go through this slowly. I thought I was going to go through this real quick. I guess I'm not. But you got to be very careful because, and you got to be very careful how you dress if you're a young lady. You shouldn't dress seductively. Especially if you're beautiful. You don't need to show anything. There's kids, they think, you like me because I show you my stomach. Cover your stomach up. I don't care you got a bunch of metal through it. Whoopee, I don't care. I asked this guy at this sandwich shop. He has all this jewelry on him, or piercings, all over his face. And I'm just me being me. I'm getting a sandwich a while back. I said, I just noticed something. Do you notice you got all this metal in your face right here? All right. You got something sticking right there. He said, no, I put that on purpose. No, I'm being serious. In your nose, there's a piece of metal. He goes, no, I put it on purpose. I go, you put metal in your face on purpose? He goes, yeah. I go, can I ask you? Yeah. Why? He goes, well, because I'm young. That's what young people do. They do this. I'll probably do it a few more years and I won't do it anymore. Because that's what people do right now. So if you are good looking or attractive, and I don't think it's right that Christian women don't modestly dress anyway. Paul writes, 1 Timothy 2:9, I want women to be modest in their appearance. They should dress decently and appropriately. I won't even say that. Studies have shown men and women that are attractive, they get better jobs. They're promoted more. They're given more. Why? Because their beauty has given has given them an edge. And that is a fact. They ask men what you want in a woman. And a guy, it's real simple. Good looks. And it's great if she looks nice, pretty girl, but she's also got brains. They ask women what they like, and this is just general statements about structure. They like men to be tall, big chest, and make money. Here's my point. Joseph's whole life is in front of him, and you better be careful because God has great plans for him. There's the most beautiful woman in the world looking at him, trying to hit on him, as the Bible says. Proverbs says this: charm and grace are deceptive, beauty is vain. The reward, humility, and the fear of the Lord and the wealth are honor of life. And the truth about us, if God removes his presence from our life and his hands are off our life, listen, without God's hand on our life, forget it. Third thing, quickly, if you're vulnerable when you're alone emotionally with a needy woman, if you're in a position and you're with someone that is needy, they're emotionally got needs, and people do this, they break one relationship, they go to another relationship, and they haven't been healed from the first. I know you're talking to this girl, and the girl you're talking to, she really likes the way you talk, she thinks you're Dr. Phil, okay, cool. But the truth is, she don't need it. I tell people this: if you just got out of a relationship or a divorce, give yourself time to let God heal you. It may take years. Let God heal you. Take your time. Notice what happens, because Pharaoh's wife blames him. She blamed her husband for the problem. She tells her husband, the problem with Joseph, you brought that slave here. It's your fault you brought him here. My husband brought a Hebrew man to make fools of us. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but the woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. Charm is deceitful, beauty disappears over time. Proverbs 6:25 says, "Don't lust in your heart for her. Do not lust in your heart for her beauty, or be captivated by her eyelashes." If she's standing there and you're standing here and they can hit you, those are false. Those are called fans. Fans. That's a fan you have, lady. Turn over there too. Okay, thank you. Another version says like this: don't be tempted by her beauty. Don't be trapped by her flirting with you. Do not focus on her beauty in your mind. That's a good one. Why? That's where it starts, in the mind. Why saying this stuff, Pastor? Because we live in a world that's going to, you walk out this door, it's going to be assaulting you. It may not be a woman named Potiphar's wife. How many know Potiphar's wife's name? No one does, because no one cares about a woman who's like that. Why didn't Potiphar kill her? You would think naturally he'd, you know what? What happened? I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill Joseph. Some writers think he didn't kill him because he knew his wife. Honey, there's been boo-boo. There was David. Now he tried to hit on Joseph. I don't know. You would think naturally that's what he would do to Joseph, but he does not. There's a reason. Some writers say because he knew his wife. So here she is. She's in this position quickly, and she's going to make the best of it. She has a man, a handsome man named Joseph. You see what perfect, my husband's gone, he's fighting his battle, whatever he's doing, he's out of the picture. That's the last person you need to spend a lot of time with, someone who's that needy. Especially if you're a Christian. Listen, if you're a Christian, you have no business spending a bunch of time with an unsaved girl talking to her. Because you get into a conversation, I know I'm getting off track, you get into a conversation with a man or a woman. If it's a woman, that woman will convince you that her husband's a terrible guy. And you know what happens? The guy starts listening to it and says, you know what? You deserve better. He did what? No way. He did? Why? You deserve so much better. You're so pretty. What? He hasn't said you're pretty in a long time? Well, you're pretty. Yeah. And next thing you know, you think you have all the answers for her life. You don't even know her. And you give all this attention to a lady you don't even know. Well, you listen so well, open so the doors. Do that with your own wife. You're vulnerable when you are emotionally needy also. And every one of us have to be very careful. Any ministry, work, life. I'm talking about all areas of our life. You be very, very careful. When you're in a place when you're empty yourself, you are empty, you're living life, you're troubled, maybe discouraged, whatever it is, the enemy's going to assault you. You be very careful. You need to know who you are and what's happening and not happening at times. You know what? I'm empty right now. I don't need to be around nobody. I can't handle that right now. I'm not going. You better know yourself. And Joseph, he's very wise. He's very wise. You know, I'll throw this in. It's a bad mistake, not to stop here. It's a bad mistake when a man or a woman starts talking to another man or a woman, even in the church, especially outside the church and in the church, and you start sharing very personal information about your marriage. You should never do that with another woman. You talk to another woman, and I know guys have done this. Guys do this. I know this. I'm a guy. I hear guys talk. It's son. I hear guys say things, say all kinds of things. And guys will talk about their wife to other guys, or meet a girl, meet a girl and talk to the girl about all his problems of his marriage. Tells her everything. You know, guess what happens? He likes that. He's talking to a woman, and guess what? The woman's listening to him too. And he goes back and forth. It's a terrible place to be. You're broken. They're broken. You guys don't need to be around each other. So I tell folks, if you got out of divorce, whatever it might have been, give it some time to be healed. I don't put time. Time's up to you, but be very, very careful. When you're empty, it's not the time you need to spend a lot of time with the opposite sex. You put yourself in that position. Number one, you watch your mouth, what you say. Don't ever say very personal things about your wife or your husband to a stranger. Guys at work talk about their wives. I couldn't handle that. At my work years ago, they would. But I wouldn't talk about my wife. I hear these guys talk about like it's nothing. No. That's holy ground. Your wife and your own kids, that's your holy ground. That's your family. It's not for public consumption. Why do you say that, Pat? Because the enemy will step in. How many families have been hurt and ruined because of a situation that was broken, and a lady or a guy happens to come along, Potiphar's wife, assaults you, wants you. It's a perfect timing. You're being set up. And I would say, you're dying for a companionship. Start spending more time with God. The first step to moral purity is being aware of the situation that you're vulnerable. And number 5, I'll stop here. Number 5, how temptation works. It's very simple. This one's hard to understand. She says, lie with me. That's hard to understand. She ain't dropping hints no more. She's going right for it. And the Bible says the next stage was persistent. She spoke to Joseph day after day. And the Bible says, and she tried to wear him down by her words. You know, this world wants to wear us down. It could be people. It could literally be the world coming after us. That's what happened to Samson with Delilah. And the Bible says what happens with this woman, she is so frustrated. She grabs his coat, and she says, lie with me. And Joseph left his coat in her hand and ran outside. I wanted to stop there. So I'll talk more about it in a couple of weeks. At that moment, Joseph makes a decision to flee. He runs. The word means literally run. You don't stop to witness to her. You don't say, you know what, leave my coat alone. Let me talk to you about the Trinity. Yeah, and I'd like to talk to you about laying on of hands and the healing ministry. do Bible study tonight. Be together. No. Joseph just said, I'm out of here. I bet you Potiphar's wife thought that was rude. In fact, she got so mad about it. Why is this? You wanted him, couldn't have him. When you couldn't have him, now you hate him. How does people's emotions go like that to that, or like that, fast? Pastor, how can she like me one moment and be mad at me the next moment? Welcome to womanhood. I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. One moment you couldn't wait to have me, now you're like, get away. It's me. Getting into something I forgot. It's okay. Yeah. But here's my point. She grabs him. It's aggressive. And God, listen to me. If this ever happens to you, number one, let's be real. Most previous one in the world going after you, okay, maybe. But more than likely, no. But maybe, okay, just normal, whatever it might be. Listen, there's a time to run. There's a time to make a stand for it. It's not the time to witness to her and say, "Oh, Pharaoh's wife." So why are you acting like this? What is wrong with you right now? Are you having a problem dealing with lust? Is that what it is? It's lust right now, huh? Oh, you're lusting after me? You mean you're lusting after me? You want me? You want me? You want Joe? He didn't say, I'm out of here. So these 5 things I just told you, there's 12. Stop in here. If you remember the 5, even if you don't, oh, there they are. You'll have them. You can write them down. If you just do these 5 things, the simple, when you're empty, you don't spend time talking the opposite sex. I don't care if they're saved or unsaved. You're aware of what's going on inside your life, where it's going in someone else's life. You're aware of your situation that you're in. If I stay right here, I'm going to do something I shouldn't do. You know you. So I'm not going to put myself there. And if it gets so aggressive it grabs me, I'm running. She'll call you a coward. I don't care. I'm going to heaven. Let's bow your heads this morning. I appreciate your patience this morning. It's a different message. But there are some more points I'd like to make. But let me say this. I'll say it today, and I will say it Thursday, or maybe next Sunday also. If you have failed, I'm not here to beat you up if you've sinned. Because for Joseph, he made it through. Many people don't make it through, but they ask for forgiveness. And a one-time deed is different than something that happens over and over and over and over again. That's different. And maybe you have fallen, or maybe you've thought things you shouldn't have thought. Maybe you've fallen, or I don't know where you're at in your life, your walk with God. But one of the great things the enemy tries to do is after you made the mistake, you sinned, you said, God, forgive me. He forgives you. His blood cleanses you from all unrighteousness. But learn from that. When David was confronted by Nathan never had to go back and confront him again. It was over. It's time, comes a point in our lives, we say, you know what, this is over. I'm done acting like this. I'm done doing things like this. I have life in front of me. Jesus Christ has come, and I need to be about my Father's business. Pastor, I'm sitting in guilt and shame. No one knows it but God and you. No sin is private. Maybe you're here this morning and say, you know what, Pastor, I need God to forgive me. Raise your hand if that's you. You say, oh, I just want forgiveness. I see all these hands. I just want forgiveness. I see those hands. Here's my hand, Pastor. Yes, I see these hands. I just want God. Forgive me, Lord. I see that hand. Anybody else? God, forgive me. Wash me in your blood, Jesus. Help me to fill my life with you and not a person or a thing. I see these hands. Maybe you're here. You want to recommit your life. Raise your hand if that's you quickly before I end this service. Here's my hand. Let's all stand in this place. These altars are open. Come and find a place to pray, would you?